Good morning. Hope your Sunday is off to a good start. You know, the fact we've reached mid-August means there's a new season just around the corner. Matter of fact, there are several new seasons coming up. Autumn, football, TV, and of course the start of a new school year. This morning, we're going to talk about television and football, and it starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, our guest this morning grew up downstate, moved with his family to Upper Michigan when he was in high school, and graduated from Gwinn High School. Spent some time at Northern Michigan University, worked for several years as an assistant golf pro, and about 14 years ago joined the staff of TV6 as an account executive. He was ultimately named sales manager, a position he held for 7 years, until he was named vice president and general manager of TV6 just over 2 years ago. Rick Rhodes, welcome back to the Ryan Report.
Thank you.
Nice to have you with us.
Nice to be here with you and nice to be here with our viewers.
We talked a little bit in your intro that at one time you were an assistant golf pro, but I know golf is really one of your passions, isn't it?
It is my one passion. That as a hobby of mine, golf. I've been golfing since I was 7 years old. I'm going to be 41 next week. So yeah, it's a huge passion of mine, and I just love the game of golf. Now, when you work in the golf industry, you know, there's some people are mistaken that they think if you work in the golf industry, you're really good.
Yeah.
No, your actual game gets worse when you work in the industry.
Especially if they call you a pro. Huh?
Exactly, yeah. So you don't get to play as much where you're working behind the scenes, you're doing a lot of teaching. So,
right. And I know one of the exciting things for you is to go to the Masters golf tournament.
Love going to the Masters, yes. I've been fortunate enough to have gone to Augusta National 3 times. And so we apply for the lottery. One of the ways you get in is you have to apply and get tickets in a lottery. Did not get tickets this time around, but was fortunate to be there earlier this spring. And it was, again, it's just one of the most beautiful places on the planet.
It's really difficult to get those tickets.
Very difficult, very difficult. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about television. You know, one of the most contentious issues that we have to face every year, and I say we, it's you, regards the NFL.
Yes.
And the fact that, you know, we have Packer fans, we have Lion fans, they each want to see their games. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes, the Packers and Lions are playing at the same time on the same network.
Correct.
How do we decide which game is going to be on?
Well, it is, first of all, both fans are very passionate, and they have a passionate fan base. And I'm here to tell you right now, in front of everybody, that I am a Detroit Lions fan.
Ironically, we both are.
We both are, yes.
Right.
Sometimes it's painful. A lot of times it's painful. But we are both Detroit Lions fans.
Painful a lot lately.
A lot lately, yes.
Yes.
But what it boils down to when we choose which team we're going to make as our primary team, it boils down to a business decision. And so, you know, the Facebook talking points to where, you know, you're in Michigan, you're a Michigan station, why don't you carry the Michigan teams? While I'd love to do that, it doesn't make good business sense because, and we went back and looked at the data, the Packers draw significantly higher ratings than the Lions do. And when you have higher ratings, you can charge more for those commercials to the advertiser.
We'll check those statistics in just a second. You know, there's also a history here. You know, the Packers have been on TV6 for a long time. I remember back when Ray Scott was the announcer. That's probably way before your time.
Way before.
Ray was a unique guy.
And
he was very succinct. You know, he didn't waste words. And he would say, Travis Williams at the 5. And then we'd watch Travis Williams run, you know. And of course, there was also a history of the Lions games being on cable. And that worked out very well, so everybody was happy, but it doesn't happen that way.
No, it worked out very well back then. But you know, what a lot of people don't understand is that the NFL, or the Fox and the NFL allow us to choose which team we want as our primary team and which team we want as our secondary team. It has nothing to do with the distance from here to Detroit or the distance from here to Green Bay or the fan base. It's basically, we're allowed to decide. If we wanted to, we could make the Minnesota Vikings our primary team. That would not be a good business.
People would really be unhappy.
People would be really, really unhappy with that. But so we get the choice, and a lot of times, and Fox will determine what are called double header weeks, and not, you know, every week there's a 1 o'clock game and there's a 4 o'clock game, just about, and we don't get to broadcast each 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock game. Fox determines what is called a doubleheader, and not every week is a doubleheader. So if we're in an unfortunate situation where the Packers play at 1 and the Lions play at 4, and it's not a double header week, we have to choose the Packers because that's our primary choice. So
okay. Let's take a look at a couple of those statistics. Let's throw up one of those charts right now, and this has to do with household ratings.
Yeah, so in our market, we use a measuring tool to measure TV audience, and that's ComScore. And in our market, what we found, and we've gone back and we've looked at over the last 4 or 5 years of data, the Lions typically generate a 22 household rating. Now, I could get into what ratings mean and all this and that, but it's still a really, really strong number. But just to put up the Packers against the Lions in the household rating, the average Packer game generates a 32 household rating, which is a very strong number. So you can see that it's a 10 rating point difference on average. And so, you know, when you have that higher audience, you can charge the advertiser more per spot. And what a lot of folks have to remember is that not only are we a community station, but we need to be a for-profit business.
Here's a chart on that now about the commercial rates.
Yeah, the average Lions spot, and this is an average, is about $350 for a 30-second spot. That's a very, very strong number, and that's a very, very strong average. But when you look at the Packers, you know, we're able to charge significantly more for the Packers game. We're charging an average of $650 for a 30-second spot. So you can see, you know, the gap there and where the opportunity to generate more profit and the opportunity to generate more revenue. And really my job is, you know, we have to really look at our bottom line and we have to make a responsible business decision. And right now it's the Packers are a responsible business decision. And again, it has nothing to do with, you know, who's winning more, who's losing more, but it's just that those are the numbers.
And we have one more to look at here, which has to do with the fact that I think there were 3 weeks when it really becomes an issue. Week number 3, Lions at Eagles is one we're not going to be carrying, apparently.
Correct, yeah. And we'll have a full list on our Facebook page of where all the conflicts are specifically. And I don't know the specifics, but some of the conflicts could be that the game is carried on the other network, on the competing network. So yeah, right now we have 3 conflicts. That could change because the NFL does flex their schedule from time to time. But week 3, Lions at Eagles, week 14, Lions at Vikings, and week 15, Buccaneers at Lions. So, you know, that could change, but right now we know of those are the conflicts.
I did look at some statistics, and apparently the good news is most of the games will be available in this market some way.
Correct.
Not every game. I think there are the 3 games that probably will not be on the air.
Yeah. Well, you know, 5 years ago, this was a bigger problem than it is now for all of our viewers, or at least for Lions fans. You know, now, you know, 5 years later, you can virtually stream any game at any time on a variety of different platforms, streaming services, apps. You know, you might have to pay a little bit of money for it, but the opportunity to grab the games is there. Okay. You know, we would love to be able to carry both teams all the time and make all of our viewers happy, but unfortunately it's just not in the cards.
Network rules, NFL rules, they all come into play.
Correct.
Okay. We'll talk about some other things in just a couple of minutes.
Sure.
Back with more on the Ryan Report after this break.
Thank you.
We'll get back to some questions in just a minute. I want to play a clip for you and for you from an interview I did during our 50th anniversary year with Bob Luke. Bob was the first station manager at TV6. In fact, he was part of the team that brought television to Upper Michigan. In this segment, he's describing one of the challenges they had back then.
It was quite exciting way before even going on the air. All of the TV dealers were excited about it. The old Northland Hotel in Marquette became headquarters for most of the TV suppliers that were trying to find local outlets. And others came in that were interested in checking with us to see whether it was going to be worthwhile to advertise in a market that was just starting up. You had to start proving set count. Right. And of course our first year was quite difficult. And we had the local dealers throughout the UP letting us know how many sets they sold out of their operations. Some of the, I remember Johnson Sports Shop became the RCA dealer, and that was one of the better sets. In fact, our entire management group purchase sets from Johnson's Board Shop so we could have them before we went on the air.
Was getting people to get TV sets. And that's not the challenge today, is it?
No, it is not the challenge today, because what you're finding is in a lot of households there's 3, 4, even 5 TV sets and you know, maybe 5, 6 mobile devices. You might find a handful of tablets and all sorts of things. So the challenges from back then are significantly different. And just to say, you know, Bob Luke was one of the great broadcast leaders back when broadcast was really starting to become a big industry up here, along with Frank Russell. And I've been spending a lot of time at the History Museum and researching a lot of the great leaders, and Bob was one of the great station leaders here.
Well, actually, he and Frank Russell and a couple of others really brought TV to the UP.
Yeah, interesting story, which we could do a whole nother show about the history of broadcast in the Upper Peninsula, because there were really some pioneers and some forward thinkers that were back part of those days.
But the competition today is really for eyeballs, isn't it?
It is for eyeballs. It's for eyeballs and engagement and impressions, and you know, there are so many different ways that folks could receive our content and our information now, and it's a matter of making sure that we're in those spaces. That we're providing that content in those spaces, that the space in those apps and those websites are fully functional, they're user friendly, and also to monetize it. You know, and so how do you make money off of it? So, you know, folks are cutting the cord, but that doesn't mean they're not watching us, and that's what we're finding. That, you know, they may be moving away from cable, but they're using other forms, streaming forms, or other areas to view us.
And there is kind of an age deal here, isn't there? Many people of my vintage and even a little bit younger are still very faithful to watching on TV, where young people are watching in many different ways.
Watching in many different ways. They might not even be watching, they might be reading. They might be extremely engaged in our app, and we're trying to make sure that our app, when somebody reads a news story, that there's video, that there's content, that there's other clickable links, so they, you know, so we want to have them stay engaged with us for as long as possible. However, that said, there are a lot of older folks that are out there that are becoming more and more digitally savvy, and so that's been changing and that's been evolving. So
we had Jim Reeves, retired publisher of the Mining Journal, here a short time back, and he did point out that social media and the internet have really affected their business in the same way.
Oh, yeah, it's, you know, we've been fortunate to really capitalize on the social media footprint. We were one of the first media outlets to have a really active an interactive social media site, and so that is changing. But what one of the challenges now with social media is you have a lot of third-party, independent folks that are gathering content, that are gathering information, that are, you know, they're little organizations, but they're trying to get that news out there first. And what happens is when they get that news out there first, they get higher levels of engagement, and that grows and grows and grows. So, you know, we're always trying to be ahead of everything, ahead of everybody, trying to be cutting edge, trying to stay on top of the trends. And that's one of the challenges, is to stay on top of the trends, because things are changing so rapidly. To quote Jim Reeves, I had lunch with Jim Reeves a couple of months ago, and he said the business has changed more in the last 5 to 7 years than it ever has in the 40 years that he's been in the newspaper business. So, you know, it keeps changing faster and faster. We got to stay on our toes, and we have to really be engaged on the trends.
We'll pick up on that in just a couple of minutes. Back with more on today's show after we take this 2-minute break. Guest this morning is Rick Rhodes, Vice President, General Manager here at TV6. Before we leave that internet subject, Facebook and live reporting, and we just had a good example a short time back now with the tragic fire at the Pine Ridge Apartments, and we were on the air on Facebook with that as it was going on.
Yeah, Facebook has really changed the way that we can, you know, provide information to the community. We can essentially provide that information on the spot as breaking news is happening. And the Facebook Lives have been a really, really strong tool for us. If you go back last year during the Father's Day flood up in Houghton, you know, that was happening during a weekend, and we don't have any we don't have any evening live news except for the late news, but as that was happening during the day, we were able to be in front of everybody and report what was happening at the time on Facebook, along with, you know, the cut-ins that we did on TV. So
quite a change from the old days when you kind of saved it until you got it on the air.
You had to save it, yeah. You were trying to save it, and you know, now it's who can get it out there first, and folks, you know, the viewers want content and they want the information right now. And that's different from 10 years ago. They want the information now, they want to know what's happening, and then they want to move on to the next thing, and they want to move about their day. So that's where Facebook and social media has really helped us get that information out immediately.
And with the changes, the cord cutting, all the things going on, one of our answers has been to provide more local programming, particularly in news, which led to the First Look program, which was initiated about a year ago, I think.
Yeah, a year ago, April,
Okay.
and we added the 5 p.m. news, the First Look, and the thought process behind that was we were looking at our programming and we were looking at the ratings, and so the Ellen program, the ratings were on the decline.
I think we have a little bit of some statistics that might help us on this, and there we go.
Yeah, so Ellen averaged a 6 household rating. Again, we could talk about ratings, but the number was 6. And so that number was on the decline. And so we knew that there was a need to do something with that program to increase the ratings, because if your ratings are on the decline, that affects programming on the backside. So that it could affect programming like the 6 o'clock news, like the 7 o'clock news. So we wanted to look at something to add to that to increase the ratings, and we added the 5 o'clock news. And the thought was to make it a different flavored news, to give it a different look. And so what we found is over the course of the first year, we increased those ratings. It does an average of about a 10, but the rating was as high as a 12, which means we doubled the ratings there. And also the audience continues to grow, and it continues to be a really strong program for us. And we've seen the revenue grow by about 50 to 60%. So again, we are a for-profit business, and we need to put content out there. We need to put programming out there that generates and grows audience, and we need to sell that, and we need to and monetize that. And really, what's significant about the 5 o'clock news is what that told us is we actually influence people to turn the channel away from other channels back to us. When we did our studies, we saw that there was strong viewership, kind of fragmented across some of the national news medias, the Fox News, CNNs, MSNBCs, and all those. And so what we've done is we've taken that audience and we've moved them to our TV station, which is really what we want to accomplish. And it's really hard to do, to get people to turn the station.
We don't have much time to talk about the new TV station, and it doesn't have the same cachet that it did back in the days when all the networks did it in September, and they had 20 episodes of new shows. But
right.
I know you're pretty excited about one show coming up on Fox.
Wow.
Tell us about that.
Well, I've moved away from WWE, but yes, we will have Friday Night SmackDown on Fox starting this fall, which is the World Wrestling Entertainment, which I used to be a huge wrestling fan, still do follow it a little bit on the side. But that's a really big deal, because the WWE has a really strong niche audience. It's more of a younger to middle-aged audience, and so that's an audience that we want to try to capture, specifically, on the Fox side, and the goal would be to take that audience and graduate them into some of our other programming. But professional wrestling is still on. It's good drama. It's good storylines. So we're excited to have the WWE on Fox UP.
It was, I don't know, for many years one of the most popular shows on cable television.
WWE Monday Night Raw was the #1. It was the most popular primetime program on cable for a long, long time, back in, I would say, the mid-'90s to late '90s, early 2000s. So.
Okay. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for coming in
bummer.
and talking about football and all the other things we talked about.
Well, thanks for having us,
We'll
Don.
have you back again.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
I'll have some other thoughts for you in just a couple of minutes. I've had a number of interesting jobs through the years, but I often look back at my first time at TV6 as the moment when my career as a broadcaster and communicator really started. And one of the neat things about it is that even though that was a half a century ago, it all took place in this very same building. This all came flashing back the other day when I walked down the back stairs leading to the studio and remembered I first did that over 50 years ago. Stairs haven't changed. There have been some major additions and changes in this building, but there are still some places that look pretty much the same as they did back then. And for me, that brings back some pleasant memories. When I came to work at TV6 the first time, I had a dual assignment. Each night on the early and late news, it was my job to do the news and the weather. It was a challenge getting ready for both segments every day, especially since I knew nothing about weather. Prior to my arrival, there were 3 on-air staff members, and the news, weather, and sports were all handled by separate announcers. About the time I arrived, station management made a major change. While it's common to have reporters in the field today covering stories, TV6, like many stations of that era, did not, until they hired Irv Horton as the news director, and it was his job to go out each day and cover meetings and activities around the Upper Peninsula. So the news department still had 3 people, but only 2 of us were used on camera. As I was thinking about these things, I remembered one night in particular. I always tried to have fun with the weather, but that night I went too far. I don't remember why, but on the late weather show, I decided to throw a snowball toward the camera. I didn't intend to actually hit it, but I did. And all of a sudden, the picture went crazy and then went off. I thought it was funny how the director in the control room could make that happen, but quickly realized the director didn't do it because he had no idea I planned to throw that snowball. I actually broke the camera. So we finished the show with just one of 2 cameras working. One thing I knew for certain, you never wanted to get in trouble with the chief engineer, and breaking the equipment was a good way to do that, especially breaking a piece of equipment as important as a studio camera. I didn't sleep well that night, worrying about what the next day would bring. Fortunately, the next day brought good news. The camera was fine. Apparently some internal part got wet from the snow, but when it dried out, it was okay. The engineers made sure I understood we weren't allowed to throw snowballs in the studio. Was doing the weather at TV6 a highlight in my life? It was certainly one of them. Gave me a chance to share some information for the people we're looking for and to have a little fun in the process. Learned a lot from doing that show. The most important thing I learned, don't throw snowballs at the camera. I'll be back in a minute. Time for us to wrap it up for another Sunday. The Today Show is just around the corner. Remember, for the latest news anytime, keep UpperMichiganSource.com in mind. You can also find current and past episodes of this show at that same address. Thanks to Rick Rhodes for joining us this morning to talk about a new TV and football season. And thank you for joining us. Let's get together again next Sunday morning.